but I would love for those of you listening, either online or recorded or on our podcast, check it out. I'm going to say it again, Britfield and the Lost Crown by C.R. Stewart is what you'll see, but it's Chad R. Stewart, and that's our guest. So I want to ask you something else that has to do, it kind of seems like a huge problem, but I believe in the 7 mountains of influence,
Hmm.
and that's family, education, government, business, religion, arts and media, arts and entertainment and media. So you, in this one book and going into the schools, you're actually hitting the arts and entertainment, the media. So, and you're being an influencer. So what would you say for someone who's like, I can connect with this? Is there any encouragement, maybe to jump on board with the Britfield Institute? Well, what would you say to encourage someone who's really connecting with what you're saying with the schools and the media and the arts and entertainment? Is there anything you could encourage them with?
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I'm familiar with the 7 mountains, and I think we're probably hitting about 5 of them actually
Yes,
with
I
the
would think so.
Britfield book and the movement.
I said just 2, but that was the first thing that hit me when I read the book, and then I went online to the Britfield Institute. I'm like, whoa, this is where I believe, just as a Christian, as a kingdom person, I believe that's where we're going to have impact.
Sure.
Not, I love reading the word, but living out the kingdom in front of people will draw people in. I think nothing will draw people more in than knowing that they have a voice, and from that very base is creativity, and they're like, oh, this is fun, this is what I was born to do. So I think I got around my question that I was going to ask you, but I
Sure.
think
No, I'll answer that. I want to
would
answer one
you
thing real
lean
quick
more
too.
into that? Would you lean more into the 7 mountains, since you're familiar with that?
Yeah, I'll say one thing too about creativity. That is, again, too, I've done years of research, and anyone that's interested in what we're talking about, just go to the BritfieldInstitute.org because
.org,
it's we
yeah.
lay out everything. We have all kinds of statistics, but we have a lot of scientific from top journals research about creativity, and it's a great healer for depression.
Yes.
So it also enlivens the mind. It helps with rest. I mean, it's just everything about creativity is a good thing. You know what I mean? And so you're talking about, if you've had a bad day or a bad week, or you start to get very narrow-minded and stuff. But if you suddenly release that by just doing something fun, something creative, something different, it really helps
Yeah.
um, with depression. But yeah, so within those 7 kingdoms, it's interesting. If you think about Devonfield, my company, we're really tackling 3 of the biggest pillars, and that's film
Okay.
and media, that's publishing, and that's education. And so it's
Wow.
really what we're all about, and yet they all beautifully tie in together right now. And we are going to do a major motion picture after each book. So
Wow.
within the next 2.5 years, we'll be launching
Yeah.
Britfield Lost Crown. And it's funny because I get 2 questions when I come to the audience that's already read the book, and they go, when's book 2 coming out, and will there be a movie?
I
So
love it. That's definitely what I thought. You have like 3 phases of where you're going. Like phase 1 is introducing, we're talking about children too, but
sure.
introducing interactive presentations, which you touched on. Will you talk on the second phase, and then really excited about the third phase?
Yeah, and part of it too right now with the book tour is kind of, if you will, it's piloting. I mean, the book tour is a big kind of
Right.
national program, but it's a great
Okay.
way to come into the schools. I mean, right now we've gone into 23 schools, and we've got 23 schools that love what we did, have
Okay.
invited us back. And
Great.
so, you kind of walk before you run. And you can imagine if we were just the Britfield Institute and we were trying to get into schools and say, hey, can we do a creativity presentation? It's like, good luck. But if you're
Yeah.
soon to be, if you will, best-selling author, and you have a great book that kids like, it's a great way to get in and say, hey,
That's
we're going to talk
awesome.
about the book as an
Yeah.
author, and then we're going to talk about creativity. And so it's a great way to test the waters. And then what we'll do probably, in the fall, is we're going to pilot with a couple of schools, phase 1. And
Okay.
again, too, none of these things are ever meant to cost the school any money.
That's
There
awesome.
could be some on some of the privates or something like that
Yeah.
have it, but it's not like going in trying to sell our programs to schools that are already way over budget and
Yeah.
underpaid teachers. And it's like, we want to design it where, we're self-funded through the Institute, we're sponsored through the Institute,
Okay.
people that believe in changing education for the better. And we're not here in the blame game to say, hey, I can
Yeah.
tell you the statistics and where we're at. I know who's to blame and why, but it doesn't really matter. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yes.
all I know is we're doing something about it, and we're doing it right now, and that's exciting. So
Wow.
yeah, so coming in with the phase one is really kind of testing this presentation and the interaction with kids.
Okay.
Phase two would really be where we start to couple pilot programs, and it could be over doing some workshops over the weekend, and eventually growing it into where we actually would have a creativity class that you'd be teaching over a semester. And you'd
Wow.
be touching in all the different areas, and you would be bringing in experts, and there's plenty of them out there that would love to do it. We bring in a best-selling author, and they teach a
Right.
week on writing a book and helping you find your voice. We bring
Yeah.
in film people from Hollywood to talk about media and doing writing a script, and then eventually, as we're doing the semester, it's kind of like, if you will, like a mini Shark Tank type of idea,
Sure.
where some of the projects can compete, because you're going to get these
Wow.
amazing ideas from these
Yeah.
kids that come out. And I tell you something, like with 11 and 12-year-olds, their answers are stunning. I was at
Wow.
one school, and it's like, oh my gosh, like these answers to some of the questions I was asking, I was like, holy moly, that's like really deep. It's like these
That's
kids,
so good.
they're right at, and it's a great age, because they're close to that tipping point. 13 and 14, I don't know, something changes and stuff, and that's not really our target audience and stuff, but we can still
Wow.
capture them and impress them.
Yeah.
So phase one, phase two, and phase three, the whole idea is really to integrate into the schools creativity, the arts, bringing in real life successful people in all these different fields, and they can come in for a week and teach a class on that particular topic, and the kids get that sort of taste of all these different topics, all these different subjects. They learn to think outside the box. We get them into groups, they're brainstorming, they work on projects together, they work on projects individually, and from that will come a great book. So let's just take one school and one classroom, and through that, maybe through the contest aspect of it, there's some
Yeah.
finalists, and there's one, two or three that have written this short story or a book. We'll take it all the way. We'll have it professionally edited. We'll get it printed, and then we can actually get it published and online for them.
Okay.
And so you got 11 and 12-year-olds that what you're doing is you're expediting this ridiculously drawn out educational system,
Okay.
that we're giving them an opportunity to do something now. And we treat them, if you will. When I go in there, I don't treat them like 11 or 12-year-olds.
Excellent.
I treat them with respect, and
Yeah.
and they're amazing. I don't talk
Yeah.
down to them. I talk with them.
Yeah.
And so that's some of our programs. And it's like, little by little, you come into the pilot, you test it at that school, you do a few more schools, and you can start to adapt it nationwide, and it will be adapted nationwide.
Yeah.
And I don't expect impacting. There's 89,000 schools within our demographic. If we were to impact in the next 3 years 100, you'll start to get change. It doesn't take a lot.
Ripple effect. Yeah.
Yes,
If
exactly.
someone wants to invite you to their school, what's the best place for them to get in touch with you? Is that the BritfieldInstitute.org or?
Yeah, I'd probably go there.
Okay.
And I think we have a form you can fill out, and we monitor that and stuff.
Okay.
And we'd be more than
Okay.
happy to get back to you. We've got the book tour, so we will be going across the nation. We
Sure.
also have
Okay.
something that we're piloting now, which is called the Britfield Classroom Experience.
Okay.
And it's a way that there's so many schools I can't get to.
Okay.
But what they can do is, if there's a school that's interested in doing it, they can and they want to purchase some of the Britfield books. We'll put together a whole package, and we have
Awesome.
we have our Britfield posters that I'll sign
Yeah.
that they can give away. A couple really cool Britfield T-shirts. Everyone gets one of our Britfield markers. I always hand these out to all the kids, which are really cool.
Very cool. I got one in the book. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
And then stickers, and then we also include our study guide, which is finished, because
Right.
Britfield was created to teach in class. It's a 85-page study guide by national standards.
Excellent.
They get the creativity kit, and then they can also set up a Skype or Zoom call like we're doing right now.
Okay.
So what you have is, you might have this small little school in Iowa that I'll never get to, but they can actually
Right.
experience what we're doing. And then they'll read the book. We can send them a couple chapters just to get them going. We'll send the teacher a free book.
Okay.
And then like in 3 or 4 weeks, I can come back for 45 minutes and talk to the classroom.
Excellent.
I think it's exciting.
That's all good. We're talking to Chad Stewart. He's author of Britfield and the Lost Crown. But more than that, impacting so many mountains of influence. If this is something that you really are connecting with, please check out britfieldinstitute.org. Is that right, Chad? Britfield.
That, yeah, that's our nonprofit, and then just Britfield.com. Just
Britfield.
check out the website because it's so cool.
Yeah. And check out the trailer.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm going to lean on you for our voice camp. I've got
Yeah,
some aspiring writers in the voice camp.
sure.
You kind of touched on it, but what would you say to encourage them in their creativity?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think writing is an amazing thing. As you can see with book one, it took me 4 years and 2,500 hours. So I say that to say that it is a disciplined art, like anything, you
Yeah,
know. And so if you want to just write and have fun, I think that's great. If you really want to, you know, be the best you can at writing, and that's really what you're doing. You're trying to become the best writer you can. You just have to spend the time to do it. Couple things that I tell even the students is
yeah,
two things about writing: is you write about what you love and you write about what you know.
it's good.
And so you could write about a space thing, and it's not, I don't expect you to know about space, but you probably have done a lot of research, you know, in
Yeah,
space.
that's
You know what I
good.
mean? So you
Yeah,
write about something you love because it's a long journey. You write about something you know. I think one of the most important things about writing is to outline it. And I'll give you a quick example because
yeah.
I
Okay,
started writing as a script writer.
okay,
And so I think that's why the book reads like a movie, and it really taught me structure and technique. And so every year I challenge myself and I'll write a new screenplay.
okay.
Couple of years ago, I wrote a romantic comedy, which was just a lot of fun. I do it because it challenges me, and I do it because it's so stringent. And so I
Okay.
wrote an entire finished draft in 6 weeks. It usually takes about 3 months. But just to give you an
Wow.
example, it took me 3 weeks to outline the entire movie. And and I say that the same thing with a book. It's like outline it the best you can. It's like taking a journey. If you were to start from Boston and drive to San Francisco, it's a trip. You got to have a beginning and an end, and then
Okay.
you start to fill it in of the places that you want to go in your book or you want to go on your trip, right? So it took me 3 weeks to write a total of, believe it or not, 2 pages, and they were all bullet points. So solid, 50, 60 hours a week. And all I had to show for that was 2 pages of bullet points for every scene. Then it took me 3 weeks to write 117 pages,
Oh,
and I just
that's
knocked
cool.
it out because see,
Yeah.
I developed my characters. I knew where it was
Right.
going, and so I think outlining your book is really important. You don't have
Yeah.
to, yeah, you don't have to know what comes next. It's really good to have a beginning and an end because you want to know where
Right.
you're headed, and then along that, you can break it up in chapters and saying, where do I want to take my book, and that could be a chapter. Another trick of the trade is that you don't have to write, from beginning to end. You can leapfrog. You might hit this wall and say, gosh, I don't know what happens here. I don't know what happens next. That's all right. Just keep writing.
That's
Jump
good
to another
advice.
scene that you already know and start writing it. And then you can come
Yeah.
back and you can bridge that.
Yeah.
If you get stuck, start editing, you know?
Okay.
So it's 10% writing, it's 90% editing, and I guarantee you that. And so
Wow.
sometimes, like, I'd hit a wall. I remember I got to midpoint, if you remember, with Windsor Castle. It was like a critical scene,
Yeah.
and that was a twist for me. I wasn't
Okay.
expecting that, which was exciting, and that's the exciting thing about writing. Stuff comes out of you, and you're like, whoa.
Wow.
So I had to take a break, and so I just jumped back because I didn't know what to do next. I jumped back to the very beginning, and I just started editing all the way through.
That's
And
so
then
cool.
I'm cleaning up what I've written. I'm making it better.
Yeah.
And editing to me is like combing knotted hair. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And the thing is like, let's say you finish your first draft, take a break, come back, and you start editing it. And you're just trying to make it as best as you can. You're trying to have a good usage of vocabulary. You're not trying to jump 3 times in
Right.
a paragraph. You know what I mean? You're trying to take 2 sentences and combining them into one, making them tight reading. Does that need to be in there? Does that sentence need to be in there? Is that redundant? So when you're editing, you're becoming a better writer. And by the
Right.
time you finish editing, you've just gone up another notch as a writer. And so then
Right.
you'll take a break, come back, and you'll edit again. And you'll just try
Wow.
to make it as good as you can. And my test on my last edit is for every single page, I try to get rid of one sentence that doesn't need to be in there. That's my
Wow.
goal. What can I remove that's redundant or to make it tight? That's one of the techniques. That's why the book reads so fast, is that
Yeah.
there's no speed bumps, there's nothing to get stuck
Yeah.
on. And there's a technique in script writing. It's called enter late and leave early. And the
Okay.
idea, like, Downton Abbey does a good job of this if you ever watched the series. But it's just like, it's not like a knock at the door, come in. They just start the scene with him inside talking to the person, and he's like, all right, go finish that, boom, next scene, versus the guy gets up, walks to the door, and leaves. Well, we know that. So it's
Right.
like, That's the technique of enter late, leave early. It makes the scene tight. It just, you go from
Right.
scene to scene, from point to point and stuff. So, you want it to move fast. You want it to be entertaining. You shouldn't have paragraphs of description of stuff. I think writing is like a funnel, and at the
Okay.
beginning of it, as you're creating your world, you're kind of coming into it. But as
Right.
you're coming into it and developing the characters, you should be totally focused on story and not so much fluff. And you'll get that. I mean,
Wow.
I was reading,
Wow.
like, I remember, like, it was a novel about Henry VIII, and I'm like, I'm in 600 pages, and she's spending 4 paragraphs describing another English morning, and I'm like, not really
Yeah.
relevant, you
Yeah.
know. So it's just like, make it tight. I mean, have description. My ultimate goal as a writer is to be able to take what would normally take a paragraph of description and do that in 1 to 2 sentences. So there's
Wow.
some way
Okay.
that, and I would compare that to like a great quote, right?
Mhm.
You could read a great quote by Emerson and maybe it's one line, and it's just like, you know, and it's just like, that to me would be great writing. Any way you can slim that down with description,
Okay.
without too much description, but you're creating the entire image. And you
Okay.
also want to give room for people to create in their own mind.
Right.
If you
So,
notice in the book, I never describe the color of the balloon. I do that on purpose
yeah,
because,
no, you're right. You did.
yeah, I
Wow.
want the
It's
kids to,
really
you know what
give
I mean?
yourself imagination. Yeah. Let
Yeah,
me ask you this. A lot of the writers in my voice camp are not necessarily fiction writers. Does a lot of that, what you just, which they're going to record and replay that part right there. I'm
sure.
going to record and replay that part. But does it work for, I guess, I don't know if I call it, some are writing inspiration, some of them are writing stories of their life. Does that same,
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
those
But
principles?
because everything is story, and
Okay.
and
Sure.
so let's say you have a nonfiction book. Well, you have a story. It's still a
Right.
story. And the
That's
best
true.
way, yeah, the better way that you describe that. And I'll tell you something that's interesting. One of my favorite books was by Richard Rhodes. He was a Pulitzer Prize. I think it's 1995. It's The Making of the Atomic Bomb. It's fascinating. It's like
Uh-huh.
almost 900 pages, and it's like something that would be very boring, science and all the stuff behind
Right.
it. It's phenomenal. It's like an
Wow.
extraordinary read. And then I looked over and I found out that half the books he writes are fiction. And
Oh,
so
wow.
he's crafted the art of storytelling, and he can take that craft and that art of storytelling, and he can get it into nonfiction books. And
Oh,
so
that's
it's,
cool.
yeah, it's no different. But
That's
but
good to
but
know.
but it should never be boring. You know what I mean? It's like if
Right.
you're writing a nonfiction book, it's a story, and you're laying that out in a story, and each chapter should be tying in and fitting into that entire story. So
Yeah.
all the rules apply. You just you want to move it fast. You want to be interesting. You don't want to drag on. You're still writing paragraphs of description or whatever the
Right.
nonfiction. And I've written nonfiction books. I'm familiar with it. But if
Okay.
you just try to streamline it and make it tight and make it all fit together nicely,
Yeah.
and if it's something that just doesn't need to be in there, it doesn't fit, get rid of it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's so
So
good. You
it's
guys,
all about story. Yeah.
you guys record that, rewind that, and take notes on that because that was gold right there. Well, Chad, we on a Memorial Day. Ooh, it's. I sure appreciate you taking some time, and I know other people on Facebook Live really appreciate it. And
Oh, sure.
if you're listening on our podcast, this is Chad Stewart, author of Britfield and the Lost Crown is the initial. If you want more information, go to britfieldinstitute.org, or is it britfield.com too? Is there?
Correct. Yeah, just Britfield.com. Check out the website because it really is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we so appreciate you. If those of you who are interested, what I'm talking about, our voice camp, you can find out more about that at redeemyourvoice.com. As we believe, Chad, that everyone has a voice that needs to be expressed
Sure.
creatively, and with your creativity. And you may feel like your coaching program is in pieces and jigsaw puzzle. I really believe you could probably use some of even the writing and a way to bring those jigsaw pieces together. And I think the important thing is a lot of times we're trying to strive for perfection instead of just going along with the process of creating something. This took Chad 4 years to do. Well, I'm sure there were reasons. So don't freak out amidst the process of developing your voice, what God has put in your very DNA to make an impact. And that's our heart, Chad. That's why I love to see the mountains.
Yes.
My husband David, known as Firebrand Dave, and I are truly passionate about raising up people who know their voice, share their voice, and maybe even market their voice for the sake of being an influencer in one of those 7 mountains. Because if we want to see change in our education, change in our government, change in our family, even in religion, we need some influencers. Those people who aren't walking by rules and then being in a box, but they're exploding the block. They're taking their ordinary, tapping into the DNA that God put in them. And truly, they are an extraordinary solution to someone's pain point. So, Chad, I want to thank you for being an extraordinary solution for our
Thank you.
school system, for young readers, for raising up entrepreneurs with a spirit of excellence. And really, I think you're going to lead other people that are going to have this passion to truly go into the schools, go into those places of influence with the media, because media is what's shaping our mind of our children.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be great if some kids could put down their iPods and their iPads and their games and pick up a real book? And if I'm talking to a parent and you're like, yeah, well, please, when this is released, it's a limited release. When you see it on Amazon, I think I saw it on Google Books. This is a soft push, but please do yourself a favor and just hand them the book and watch what happens. So I'm just passionate about that. Chad, thank you for taking so much time. And those of you watching on Facebook, thank you for sticking with us. I sure do appreciate it. And of course, those that are listening on our iPod, on Spotify and iTunes, this is Tea Talks. I'm Theresa Croft. So glad you could join us. Coming up next, more interviews on how you can find your voice.
Thank you, Theresa. Honor.
All right. Thanks, Todd.